Alright, so in this video I want to talk about something new called layer styles. This is going to be a little bit of a review of some of the things we've done up to now, dealing with gradients and shadows and some other options. It's something you can apply to objects or text, and some of it's unique. It's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and look at this background image. Here there's some like fall items sitting on this teal background. I'm going to go ahead and put some text on here. I want this text up in the left corner, but there's stuff in the way. So first, how do I move that? If you come up to image and you go to image rotation, you can actually move the image or you can flip it. So if I wanted to go 90 degrees counterclockwise, that'll give me an edge to work with, and then it turns it vertically. But let's say I didn't want to do that. Let's flip this. So I'm going to go to image, image rotation, flip vertically, and that'll move that top corner down to the bottom. So now I can put my text up here. I'm going to first show you this next effect on just a square. I'm going to create a new layer, call it square. I'm just going to paint with this like yellow color. Grab my brush. There we go. So there's something called stroke. If I go to edit, stroke, I can pick whatever color. Stroke is essentially like an outline. So if I pick black, you can choose whether you want this to be outside of the selection, centered on that selection, or inside, which will cover up some of the object. I'm just going to leave it on outside. All the rest of this is fine. I'm just going to click OK, and you can see it adds a very sharp outline to the object. Same thing works for text. But let me go ahead and delete this, and I'll show you what I'm going to do and why that is kind of limited. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in an image, place embedded. Here's a picture of some like fall leaves. I'm going to move this up and shrink it down just a little bit. If I come over to the text tool, one of the options here is to have a text type mask. So you can choose the font that you want, the size. If I click up here on the move tool, if I went to move this, it's going to move the entire layer. But if I click on the like a selection tool and I come inside the selection, my mouse will change and allow me to move the selection. I'm essentially going to make a mask from this. So I want to have some of the details of these leaves in the letters. When I'm happy with it, I can come down here and click mask. And now I can go to my move tool and move this where I want it. So there's not a lot of contrast with this. I wish, kind of like that object, I could put like a black outline or a stroke along this text to kind of help it stand out. But you'll see if I go to edit stroke, it's not an option. It does give you the option if you try to rasterize this layer, but then when you actually do it, it doesn't work. But there is another way to do it. And this layer styles that we're introducing in this video will do that very thing. So you know that if you double click on the letters over here, you can rename this. So I can just call this text. If you don't double click on the letters, but you just double click on the layer, something comes up called layer style. And there's a whole bunch of options. So one of those options is to add a stroke. So if I click on this, I can add a stroke, I can change the size. It does very much the same thing. You can change the opacity. You can pick whether you want it outside of the border of that image, or if you want it inside or centered. It's really whatever you think. When you're happy with it, you can click OK. There are some other options. So that's stroke. I'm going to uncheck that for a second. There's bevel and emboss. So if you click on this, you can kind of see like a little preview over here. Let's see what this one is. So if I increase this, you can kind of see it adds like a bevel. Right now it's using a smoothing technique. You can have it look a little different. Here's a chisel effect. So that's bevel. Another one's called contour. There's another one called texture. So you could fill in, like if you had just text, you can fill it in with some kind of pattern. Just going to uncheck that real quick. We already talked about stroke. Inner shadow is an interesting effect, kind of like inner glow, how you can have something inside of the lettering to help it stand out. It's easiest to see if I move this to normal and we pick like white, and I move this up. So you can kind of see some effects going on here. So let's pick another one. Color overlay. This is if you just wanted to pick a color. You can do the same thing with a gradient. So like if you have gradient overlay, you can pick one of the gradients like we did before, and it will apply to the text. You can change the angle that that gradient comes at. You can also change the type if you want to change the way the gradient appears. So lots of cool options. Let me go ahead and turn that one off. Pattern overlay, again, you can fill with a pattern. You can change the angle that that pattern shows at. You can scale the pattern, so that's an option we didn't get before. So like I said, this layer styles thing does have some really cool features. Outer glow is kind of like what it sounds, and then look at this. There is a drop shadow option. So if you click on this, again, you can pick the angle at which the shadow will show up. You can pick the opacity of the shadow if you want it darker or lighter. So like other things in this layer, looks like the shadow is like mild, so I can, you know, try to match that if I want. Looks like the light is coming in from the left side, so it's pretty much like that. I can move it a little more if I want to. Let's see. You can change the distance at which the shadow is to show how far off the paper the text is. You can change the spread, which is how much the shadow spreads out. You can change the size of the shadow, depending on how hard or soft or how diffuse you want it to appear. I'm going to leave it kind of soft. And then you can change even like the way that the shadow appears on the paper. So a lot of really interesting options. I'm just going to leave this back with the linear option. I'm just going to click, let's see, I wanted to bring that stroke back in. Click OK. So another interesting thing about these effects, so you'll see the layer style shows up with this FX icon, and you can see here effects, stroke, and drop shadow. So you can toggle on and off the visibility of each different thing. Let's say that I had like another object or something I wanted to apply the effect to. This is actually really cool. So here I have the object, and here I have something else with a stroke and with the shadow. Unlike before, when we were trying to like discuss some shadows, like here I would go command and click on this, and I'd go to select and modify the selection, feather it, I don't know, 20 pixels or so, and then I could grab my brush, I can make a new layer, I can move it behind the rectangle, I can brush a shadow basically, and then I can move that shadow like that. It'd be easier to see if this rectangle was not black, but that's how we did shadows before. What's cool about this This additional layer is if I have like an object, like a square. If I have some object already with the effect on it, and I grab this, I can move the effect to something else. So now this has a stroke in the shadow, and I took it away from this one. So you can click and drag it to different objects. If you hold down the Option key when you grab it, you can apply the effect easily to different objects. So this would be a really quick way to do shadows on different objects. So I think that is a handy feature. I think I'm going to end the video here. Like I said, there's a million ways to do different things, but sometimes when you're limited, there's usually another way to go about something that will basically do the same thing. So, all right, until next time.